88 days, and a source close to the investigation just told me directly that they are at dead ends. Not cold, not stalled, dead ends, plural. Thousands of tips sitting unprocessed. No suspects. No significant developments. The task force is still working. Nobody is calling it a cold case, and I want to be precise about that distinction. But the honest picture coming out of Tucson right now is that the investigation is grinding through leads without anything breaking open. And the people who know this case, the ones who have been closest to it from the beginning, are starting to map out what it will actually take to crack it. That answer is not reassuring, and I think you deserve to hear it clearly. To understand where this investigation stands, you have to understand something about how Pima County works, or more accurately, how it has stopped working, because the Nancy Guthrie case does not exist in a vacuum. It exists inside a law enforcement agency that a retired SWAT commander just described to me on camera as toxic. Not in the past tense, present tense, right now. And that word, coming from a man who spent decades inside that department and retired just 4 months ago, carries weight that the press briefings and the official statements simply cannot offset. If you've been following this channel and you want every development in this case as it happens, subscribe to Redacted Files Lab right now. The details I'm about to walk through are not making the morning shows. Let's start with what the investigation actually looks like from the inside. The working theory among investigators and retired analysts who have looked at this case is that whoever took Nancy Guthrie from her home knew her. Not necessarily personally, not a close friend, not necessarily family, but someone with contact, a contractor, someone who had been to the property, someone who knew the rhythms of that house well enough to move through it in the middle of the night with intention. Multiple retired FBI profilers, behavioral analysts who have spent careers building suspect profiles from exactly this kind of evidence pattern have landed in the same place independently. Statistically, in cases structured like this one, a total stranger is the least likely explanation. And here's the detail that shifts that theory from abstract to concrete. The ransom demand. A single Bitcoin. At the time of the demand, roughly half a Bitcoin in value. The kind of number that, when you say it out loud in the context of a nationally known figure's mother, sounds almost like an afterthought. One retired law enforcement analyst put it plainly, someone planning a real ransom operation against a target. This high profile doesn't ask for that. They ask for $10 million. They ask for something commensurate with the risk they just took. The theory that's gaining traction quietly, among people who know how these cases work, is that the Bitcoin demand wasn't the plan. It was the pivot. Something went wrong early. Something happened to Nancy Guthrie shortly after she was taken, and the people responsible shifted their entire strategy. Throw out a ransom demand to create noise, to redirect investigators, to buy time. Then go silent. Then wait for the story to fade. 88 days later, those same people are still silent, and the investigation is sitting on dead ends. What breaks a case like this, according to people who have solved cases like this? Two things. The first, someone finds Nancy. The second, one of the people involved says something to the wrong person, a word to a friend, a confession to a partner, a detail that slips in a moment of guilt or alcohol or misplaced trust. That information makes its way, eventually, to someone with a conscience, and that person calls a tip line. That's it. Those are the two realistic paths forward. Not a forensic breakthrough, though the DNA from the hair sample found inside Nancy's home is still being processed at the FBI lab, and that could still change things. Not a surveillance system catching a new face. The two most likely scenarios are the most human ones. Someone finds her or someone talks. And that brings me to the part of this story that I cannot let go. The desert outside Tucson is not searchable by conventional means. A retired law enforcement commander said it to me directly. Doing a full grid search of that terrain would take thousands of people and thousands of years. It is not a realistic proposition for a department operating within normal resource constraints. The heat sidelines search dogs within hours. The cactus terrain shreds equipment. There are areas within reasonable distance of that neighborhood that no official search team has covered, because there is simply no way to cover all of it with what the Pima County Sheriff's Office has. The United Cajun Navy offered to help. Aerial drones, thermal imaging, K-9 teams with rotation protocols built specifically for desert heat, a partnership with border terrain specialists who operate in the exact landscape that surrounds Tucson. An organization that, by their own documented record, finds human remains on approximately half of all their searches, most of those remains belonging to cases they were not even looking for. The sheriff's office said no, still. And when I asked a man who spent over 2 decades inside that department why would any law enforcement agency facing a high-profile unsolved disappearance with no suspects and a vast unsearched landscape turn away that kind of resource? His answer was one word: ego. That's not editorializing. That's the direct assessment of a retired SWAT commander who knows the leadership culture of that department from the inside. The same instinct, he told me, that initially pushed the FBI away. We can do this ourselves. We don't need outside help. This is our county. The same instinct that has isolated that department from peer agencies, from federal partnerships, from the Arizona Sheriff's Association, a culture of compartmentalization so extreme that he described it, without hesitation, as inbreeding. And that culture has a name attached to it. The Pima County Sheriff has been under formal scrutiny from the county's Board of Supervisors. He was required to respond to a list of questions under oath in a sworn statement. According to former department personnel familiar with the process, his response was not sworn. It was not under oath. He responded, and then by their account effectively dismissed the board's authority over him. This is a man who, in a separate legal proceeding, was asked how many times he had been suspended from a job. The answer was 8. He said never. That is not a misremembering. That is not a slip of the tongue. Nobody forgets being suspended from their job 8 times. That answer, given under oath in a lawsuit, puts him squarely on what law enforcement calls a Brady list, a documented record of credibility issues that follows an officer into every future courtroom appearance, that forces the question, are you on the Brady list, every single time they take the stand. He runs the department investigating Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. Now, I want to be precise here, because precision matters. The people with direct knowledge of this case have told me they do not believe the sheriff's personal conduct has deliberately obstructed the investigation. They do not believe he wants this case to go unsolved. The investigators on the ground are, by all accounts, working hard and working correctly. What the leadership crisis has done is something more structural and more corrosive. It has created a department where the most experienced personnel left, where homicide commanders and cold case specialists with decades of institutional knowledge walked out the door, not retired, transferred, took demotions to go work somewhere else, where morale was, in the words of someone who was there until January, already in the tank before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. A vote of no confidence, 100%. Every member of the department who voted no confidence in their own leader, and the investigation into the disappearance of an 84-year-old woman is running on whatever is left. Like, here's where things stand on day 88. The DNA from the hair sample is still being processed at the FBI lab. It went there after the department initially resisted sending it, then reversed course. One of several decisions in this case where the official position changed after public pressure or investigative necessity made the original position untenable. The Ring camera footage of the unidentified figure near Nancy's property has been analyzed. The January 11th sighting, the person in the dark, observed from a bathroom window, no face, no name, remains unresolved. The task force is working backward through years of Nancy's contacts, every contractor, every visitor, every connection, however small. The FBI is involved and has been making return visits to the neighborhood. No suspect has been named. No remains have been found. Thousands of tips remain unprocessed. The Board of Supervisors is now weighing whether the sheriff's failure to respond under oath constitutes a statutory violation that would permit removal from office. A recall effort is running in parallel, though the signature threshold, over 120,000 valid signatures, makes it a difficult path. An independent investigation has already documented, as fact rather than allegation, that the sheriff lied under oath in a deposition, that he used his position for political influence, and that he expected senior commanders to violate the department's own code of ethics. The man who told me all of this spent 25 years in that department. He ran the SWAT team. He retired 4 months ago, and he said something at the end of our conversation that I keep coming back to. He said, "It doesn't matter who solves this. It doesn't matter if it's the FBI. the United Cajun Navy, the task force, or someone driving through the desert and stumbling across something they weren't looking for. The only thing that matters is finding Nancy and getting justice for the family. That's it. That's the whole mission. Everything else, the jurisdictional pride, the refusal of outside help, the ego of a sheriff who won't make a sworn statement to a board of supervisors, all of it is noise surrounding that single obligation. He's right, and that's exactly what makes the noise so damaging. The yellow ribbons are still in the trees outside Nancy Guthrie's house. The memorial is still there. The people who knew her are still waiting. Her daughter goes to work every morning and puts on a smile for a television audience of millions, and somewhere behind that smile is a family that still does not know what happened to the woman they describe as vivacious, open, warm, the kind of person who would have welcomed anyone through her door. 88 days. Here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want your answer in the comments, not a diplomatic one, the real one. We now know that the leadership of the department investigating this case has been documented by independent investigators to have lied under oath and expected officers under his command to violate their own code of ethics. We know experienced investigators left that department in numbers that one insider described as hundreds of years of combined experience walking out the door. And we know that a volunteer organization capable of aerial desert searches was turned away without a serious public explanation. My question is this: does the institutional failure of the Pima County Sheriff's Department carry moral responsibility for where this investigation stands today? Not legal responsibility, moral responsibility. To Nancy Guthrie, to her family, to the community that still has yellow ribbons in its trees. Tell me where you land on that. I want to read every response. Subscribe to Redacted Files Lab. This case is not going anywhere, and neither am I. There are developments coming that haven't broken publicly yet, and when they do, you'll want to already be here. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 88 days. The file is still open. It has just been redacted.